Morning, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Preaching to the Choir. This isn't going to be a soft episode, like a sanitized, washed out version of Christianity. I am going to be very intentional, very deliberate, very detail oriented in this message because I want, especially men, to get it. You can't be successful in a call to action in implementing anything in your life if you're not willing to sit down, listen, plan, organize, and implement that plan of execution. It increases your chances of success, of probability of meeting your objectives and goals and mission. And so it's why I can't short stroke this. I can't just give you the philosophical opinion. I have to give you the detail-oriented call to action. A lot of men are drifting through life. I get it. I've had seasons of drifting through life, trying to figure it out. We know the adage of like the guy who, goes on the run like Forrest Gump and just keeps on running. And then eventually he figures it out. The trauma fades away. That feeling that he had is no longer there. And then he could shift into another season in life. But what's different about our life today is that our world, especially in our own country, wants men to be meek and weak, distant, quiet, compliant, and often distracted. It wants us addicted and spiritually asleep. It's intimidated by men who are willing to sacrifice, serve. This concept could be told in this idea of this patriarchy of toxic masculinity. All the key phrases and all the messaging and propaganda that has convinced us that we shouldn't protect our families. We shouldn't even protect our kids because they need to figure it out. I use the example of my child standing up on the chair in a restaurant. Some people will say, let them live, let them be. And then that's a microcosm of the evolving issue. Because as men, if we refuse to be clear and concise, very specific, and give that child constructive criticism and walls and barriers and left to right limits to allow them to thrive within some discipline, then they run amok. So I say to my son, hey son, can you sit on your butt, babe? We're in a restaurant. We don't do that. And then he gets it. Because children, especially young boys, want to be told how to operate in life from a masculine figure, preferably their father. That's my role. And so that role evolves into their teenage years and their adulthood to again be there, giving them latitude when appropriate, but also giving them very specific guidance. We see all over social media what's happened to our society. Girls become women, and those women brag about how many bodies they stacked. And it's not in warfare. I mean, like, how many people have they slept with? We see the same thing transfer to men, where men have no understanding, boys have no understanding how to be men because they didn't have the father figure. And so this world, this society, this country, our own communities in our own states thrive off of this protocol and process of removing masculinity that's so toxic away from the home. It's the same circumstance that I'm dealing with right now. I talked to a state senator, which will remain unnamed as of right now, but this gentleman knows the system inside and out. And he told me it's because they don't like you because you're a man. They don't like your voice. They don't like how clear and concise you are with your communication. They don't like how you look them in the eyes and aren't afraid of them. They don't like you because you have conviction. And so I've faced these challenges, and so are you. And not only will we face these challenges as men now, but our children, especially our young boys that evolve into men, will suffer because of our lack of spiritual identity and our inability to ground ourselves because we're drifting through life when we need to be very deliberate. We're hasty. We're hastily trying to figure it out. No plan. Some would say we're winging it. And that's a massive problem. But a man aligned with God, a man who's deliberate, intentional, and anchored in his own truth and biblical truth, he's the most dangerous man. He's dangerous to darkness, to complacency, to generational trauma and curses, and for sure to the enemy himself. Today's message is about becoming that man. And this is the evolving process, because I haven't always been that man, but I am now. A lot of men hold guilt and shame because they think it's too late. It's never too late. It's never too late to turn things around and redeem your own life. It's the promise of Jesus Christ through his grace, not through a deed, a club, a cult, a church, a specific. Men who provide for their families, there are plenty of those. But how many men are leading their families? A lot of men think, hey, I am the provider. I just go to work and get it done. No, that's given. That is your standard operating procedure. The reality is this idea that you're the provider and you could check out of everything else, that's weak. You're weak for thinking that. But it's okay. We could fix that. We could change. In 1 Corinthians 16:13, it says, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Imagine a radical feminist watching a man tell their child that. When my son falls, when my daughter falls on the playground, I tell them to get up, take a deep breath through your nose, relax, be strong, be courageous. And they don't cry more. They don't fall to their knees and then into the fetal. They don't complain. They look at me because I have conviction in my voice, in my stance, in my stare. Say, be strong. And they lift their chin a little bit higher. And they say to themselves, be strong. How important is that to carry into adulthood? Especially for our vulnerable little girls that grow up to be vulnerable women, where everybody around them who wants to protect them, the boys that grow into men, are demasculated because of society and how they communicate to men. I've had a woman tell me when holding the door, I can get the door myself. Get the door yourself. This date's over. I've had women tell me at restaurants, at venues, in service, when I say yes, ma'am. I've had women tell me that is demeaning to call me ma'am. Well, when I grew up, especially my grandmother's house, any woman you talk to, you called them ma'am. Any man you talk to, you called them sir. But again, it's this constant belittling of young men, demasculating them, and turning them into meek and weak people. Autopilot kills legacy. Autopilot hands generational pain to your kids, and autopilot is spiritually negligent. We all want to run on autopilot. It's convenient to tap out. When you wake up, because you're running manual, you might have a glitch. You look down at the scale and you can't even see it because your belly's covering the numbers. You look in the mirror and you don't even recognize your face because it's been a while. You look at your situation, your family, your wife, your children, and realize you're so disconnected, and plugging back in is too scary because autopilot has created this complacent circumstance for you to lead, to be a man. Because life requires us to be plugged in, to fly by the seat of the pants, be conscious and present at all times. I know it's hard. It's for sure hard, especially when you're in the monotony, the mundane, the constant scheduling and pattern of life to provide. But it's on you. The cost of action is we don't have a crisis of toxic masculinity. We have a crisis of absent masculinity. Like it's not even there. Men no longer step up. Men no longer speak the truth. Men no longer fight for their families. And men let the culture raise their children, not them. Somebody told me, like, hey man, the situation you're in is very difficult. Just go along with the program. Negative, ghostwriter. I don't go along with the program, especially when the program is broken and it involves my children. What I will do is fight when it's appropriate. If we're going through the process and it's fair, and I feel like the process is benefiting my children because it's in the best interest, sure. When it doesn't, for sure, I will resist. For sure, I will fight. And I will let my voice be heard. I had to go through back doors to get things changed in my circumstance, but that's okay. I'm a man. That's what I do. It's so awesome you're fighting for your kids. What other option does a man, a father have but to fight for his kids, fight for his family, fight for his faith? And again, I am preaching to the choir, but I'm afraid the choir has fallen complacent because I see it. I see it in my own peer group of men who have the ability to talk to the masses in a positive way, but they're too demasculated. They're too fearful to lose profits, to lose popularity. And I've been there, but I'm not there anymore. So I'll profess, I'll preach to the choir, I'll talk out loud and loud. Scripture is clear. Timothy 1:5-8 says, if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith. He has denied the faith. Providing isn't just financial. It's not financial security. It's spiritual, emotional, it's leadership, it's presence. Strong families are strong because of strong men. Strong societies are strong because of strong families. And strong men are not born. They are built through obedience in God, discipline every single moment of the day. You know, every man carries a chain behind him. Think about the links in the chain. Trauma, sin patterns, father wounds, silence, fear, addiction. It goes on and on and on, and we drag this chain behind us. John 8:36 says, therefore, if the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. The day, the moment, not even the day, the moment you decide to walk with God deliberately is the day that chain breaks. I remember the moment. I told a friend recently about that moment. My buddy Brent. a wave of emotion from my gut through my chest, behind my eyes, like a tsunami pushing on the walls of my eyeballs. I remember the moment. I remember the moment I let go and I trusted completely. It was about 4 months in, 5 months in. I hadn't seen my children at all. Stripped from my lives, our lives. My mother, their grandmother, my spouse, their stepmom, my children on this side, their siblings. And I prayed to God that I would see them in my dreams, and I couldn't see them. I didn't see them. And I didn't know why. And then Pearl died. My dog of 10 years that helped me through a lot of difficult times. An angel sent from God. She passed away in our house, in our home, with our hands on her. And I remember thinking to myself, I submit. And part of it was, I just give up. I'm done. How much more can I break? How much more can a man break? Shattered in a million pieces. And I walked outside. It was cloudy. Couldn't see the moon. Couldn't see a star. And I threw my hands to the sky and I said, God, I submit. Whatever you want. And that's hard for me to do. I don't submit to anybody, to anything. And that's why it took me so long. 45 years and some change. And then that night when I went to sleep, I had a dream. I was in my kids' classroom in school, which I had been very involved with. And then all of a sudden, like that, gone. And then in that dream, I heard them coming down the hall. And I was fearful, not because of them, but because of their mother. And I didn't want her to see me. And I hid. And then when I saw them walking down the hall through the glass of the classroom, I realized it was just them. They came into the classroom and I hugged them for the first time. I made contact with them for the first time in 4 or 5 months in that dream. Not in real life, but in that dream. But it felt real. So real that I feel convicted and convinced that they felt it too. I would hear my daughter scream, "Daddy," in the middle of the night leading up to that, and I knew that was happening for real. My daughter's a daddy's girl. And these children are my best friends, my lifeline. My entire family is, but these children are. And I woke up and pulled myself out of the dream screaming and crying. And not because I was distraught, but because I was happy and I submitted to God. I walked downstairs at 3-something in the morning and threw my hands to the sky and said, "Thank you, Jesus. I get it now." Full circle. Full circle. Generational curses break under godly fathers. Generational sin dies under spiritual leadership. And your past does not get to dictate your children's future unless you allow it. And it's up to you. So stop being weak. I don't mean don't be distraught. I don't mean don't suffer. Don't grieve. I mean stop being weak. There's a difference. You don't break change with hope as a course of action, with wishful thinking. That's not how it works. You break chains with God's authority, your obedience, and intentional discipline. And that's how you get it done. There is no other way. As a man who has lived 100 lives in this lifetime, I will tell you 100% with conviction that is the only path to a fulfilled life. I know many people who are wealthy and have it all, seemingly, and they're the most broke because they don't have God, they don't have faith, they barely have family, and they worship everything else but the most important things in life. So how do we do it? Build legacy. And legacy isn't your multi-million-dollar business. It's not your stock portfolio. Legacy isn't your name on a building, on a billboard, on social media. It's not your YouTube following. Legacy isn't what people say at your funeral, because even that doesn't matter. Legacy is spiritual inheritance. In Proverbs 13:22, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And a legacy-driven man sets the pace, the standards, the tone, and he shows up daily every single moment of the day and walks with God. For sure, you'll fall short. Line 6 of the Sentinel's Creed when I was a tomb guard said, my standard will remain perfection. Then let that be your standard. For sure, striving for that standard, you will fall short. But anything less than perfection in your standard, you submit it to mediocrity. And that isn't what God wants for you. A legacy-driven man protects his home, prays over his family, shepherds his children, speaks truth instead of silence, speaks truth instead of silence. Your passivity, your wanting to get along, your wanting to be popular, your not wanting the friction and confrontation, get over it. Because a legacy-driven man, a man of God, speaks truth instead of silence. Even if that truth is a confrontation with yourself and the lies that you've told yourself. And a legacy-driven man lives deliberately, not accidentally, fumbling through life. Wake up with conviction and get it done deliberately as a campaign. Deliberately as a campaign. Because what you model, what they see becomes what they inherit. And that's a hard truth that I've had to realize. My anger, my frustration with things going on in the world and how that is inherited by my children, by my spouse, unacceptable. Yeah. Look in the mirror. See yourself. See the lies. See the anger. See the weakness. See the passivity. See the sin. And confront yourself and say, it's time to move on. It's time to move forward. It's time that we confront ourselves and we move forward. We are living in a generation where Satan isn't even hiding the strategy anymore. Break the man, break the family. Break the family, break the community. Break the community, and you break the nation. What do you think's happening right now to our society, to our country, to our communities? It's spiritual warfare. It's generational warfare. This period of time, right now, we're fighting a generation of spiritual warfare. And it's identity warfare. Because the enemy is targeting man, because a godly man is a threat. Ephesians 6:12 says, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. I don't do that anymore. I love it when people speak my name out of their mouth, criticizing, talking crap, because I don't care. There's so many things in this life, in this world, in my own home, in the presence of my own senses, that's so more important. My son Leland took his first poop this morning. That's more important than me wasting any energy or time on others. If men do not rise now, we're going to lose the next generation. This is the most fatherless, faithless, and confused generation in American history. They don't need influencers. They don't need trends. They need fathers, and fathers need God. Not someday, not eventually when we get to it, not when life slows down, but now. Lastly, here's your call to action. Your spiritual audit. Where am I drifting? Where do you drift every single day? Where am I spiritually asleep? What sin am I tolerating? Have I accepted it as the new norm? Who am I failing to lead? It might even be yourself. And what excuses am I protecting? God doesn't need perfection from you. He needs willingness. One of my favorite quotes from the Bible is Isaiah 6:8. Here I am. Send me. Willingness. Deliberate men don't wait. They don't excuse. They don't hide. Deliberate men obey. Your kids don't need a perfect dad. I'm not perfect. Far from it. They need a father who walks with God, repents when he fails, and shows up. Leads with courage. And if we did that, if men rise, truly rise, which is our goal, my goal, John's goal, a lot of men around me's goal. If men rise, truly rise, we rebuild everything. Marriages, families, communities, purpose, discipline, identity, commitment, faith. We rebuild it all. Honestly, our nations are only as strong as our men. It's one of the reasons why we're profoundly weak, because our men are weak. That adage, weak men, strong men, a country's men will determine the fate of a nation. And right now, we have a collective of weak men. That's okay. Because strong men like me, potentially you, will stand up and preach truth, mentor, advise, and assist the weak men, and will make you stronger. That's our goal. That's my goal for the rest of my life as a priority. And this isn't a motivational speech. It's an assignment. It is a calling, not just to action, but to war. The next generation, these young boys growing up, are watching how you're fighting, what you're doing every single day, and if you're in or out. Be deliberate. Get deliberate. Get intentional. Get aligned with God. And that starts today. Ernest Shackleton, one of my favorite stories about endurance, resilience. He said, through endurance, we conquer. It was his family motto. I have his ship on my arm as a reminder, called the Endurance. My take on it is through faith, we conquer. Love you guys. Hope you have a good week. It's time to get to work.